Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, a podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with my permanent guest, Cammy. Hey, Cammy, what up?
Hey, Bryant. How are you?
I've been better. I've had better days than today. Cammy bailed me out of a car trouble, but it's okay because we're here. We're ready to do a podcast, and we have a very fun, interesting topic. Uh, Cammy, how did this come to you? Can you tell us and where you got it from?
Um, did I tell you when I texted you? Because I do not remember.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, I don't think you did. It just kind of came out of the blue. I think maybe you found it. Did you
yeah.
find it during
I think maybe
Halloween
I found it
stuff?
researching or something. I don't remember.
That must have been
That's
it.
funny.
Well, it's the Bisclavret story, which comes from Marie de France, which actually may not even be her name, but I'll talk about that soon. It's a decidedly French sounding poem, but it comes from the Brittonic world, from basically like the old Celtic people based in Cornwall, and sort of like how the King Arthur stories are these old, uh, native, because you've got like the people of Wales and Cornwall, and they're unique, different cultures with their own kind of languages. They're all kind of from Celtic, but there are these great stories that came from it too, like King Arthur. But like how King Arthur became really popular during this period, this is the 12th to 13th century medieval Europe. These French people were like, we need new content, and they were like, well, those you know Brittonic people had really cool stuff. Let's change it up, and that's what Marie did. She wrote a bunch of stories, and so this is it's a fun werewolf story, is the way to put it, but it's not as devious as it should have been for like October. So I think it'll be fun. But you've got the story for us, right, Cammy?
I
In
do.
12th century French, you're going to recite it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or even better, in Cornish or 6th century BC Breton. How about that? No, but go
All of the
ahead.
above.
Yeah. But well, why don't you regale us with your story, and then we'll have a little discussion on it.
Okay, sure. So, I used the lace of the werewolf, and they do accredit it to Marie de France. The awpress.cu
Mm,
is where I got that from, and there was also a lovely spoken version of it on YouTube,
mm,
and it's called "The Lay of the Werewolf" by Marie de France, and it's from Best Library. So if you
cool.
want to hear the actual story recited in English, not in these ancient languages, you can. In the land of Brittany, many years ago, before dragons had been banished from the earth, there was a handsome and strong baron who was very loved by all. He was an ideal servant to his king and was very loved among his peers. His wife and he lived happily for many years. Her only complaint was that he would leave once a month in the middle of the night and would not return for many days. She finally grew so tired of him that she confronted him on where he was going. She thought he had found another lover and was meeting them during these nightly hours. Though he didn't want to confess, he felt he had to save his marriage. He told her that he was not going off to meet a lover, but rather to become a wolf. He told her the entire process of taking off his clothes and hiding them so that he could change back to human form when he put them on again. Without his clothes, he said, he would remain a wolf forever. The wife, upon hearing the confession of her husband, was distraught and fearful. She turned to the arms of a knight who had sought her hand in marriage before she had met the baron. She devised a plan to take her husband's clothes the next time he went off to become a wolf and hide them well, so that she could pronounce him missing and marry the knight. Her lover retrieved the clothes and brought them back for her to hide. Then they went about their business while the baron was stuck in wolf form. Many months passed, and no search parties could locate the missing man, so the lady and the knight were allowed to marry. It was around a year after his disappearance that the king happened to be out on a hunt when his dogs cornered a large wolf. The wolf, seeing the king approach, bowed to him. The king was so impressed that he brought the animal home and treated him as though he were a cherished pet. For many months, the beast was seen being very docile to the humans around him, but that ended one day during a banquet the king was throwing. The very knight who had taken the baron's clothes was in attendance, and he was immediately attacked by the wolf. The king pulled him off before he could do much harm, but could not help but think the knight had somehow wronged his pet. The next week, the king went out on a hunt in the forest where he found the wolf. He brought his companion with him, and they had great success in their pursuit. Come nightfall, the king took lodging at the house of the missing baron's wife. As soon as the wife greeted her king at the door, the wolf attacked and bit off her nose. The king was able to contain his pet, but was reminded by his council that the night that the wolf had attacked was her husband, and they must have done some unspeakable wrong to this wolf for him to be so ready to attack them. The lady and her knight were taken in by the guards and tortured until they revealed their awful truth. And they told the guards where the clothing was. So the wolf was taken to the king's chamber and given his clothes to put on. And after a few minutes, the king came into his bedchamber, and there lay the baron upon the king's bed. So happy to see the baron again, the king picked him up and laid hundreds of kisses upon him. The baron's wife was taken out of the kingdom with her knight, and to this day the children of those two wretched souls, mostly beasts themselves, are born without a nose.
I love how that becomes a genealogical trait of mean to werewolves. Yeah, this is really cool. I've always been really fascinated by Brittany, the country. Like it's like the very northernmost tip of France, I want to say, I believe, kind of connecting to the Channel to England, and that one it's significant because when the Anglo-Saxons and like Jutes and stuff invaded England during like just after the time of Rome, so wait, what is that, 4th century BC, I want to say, right? Or 4th AD.
You're the history expert.
I know. It's got to be 4th AD, right? Oh well. When they, so the Romans had come, this Romano-British culture, these Celtic peoples had been living there for hundreds and hundreds of years. They weren't the ones that made Stonehenge and stuff, but they'd been living there for a long time, and they mixed with the Romans. But then the Anglo-Saxons come, and they're like, we got to get out. We can't do this because there's no Romans here to protect us. And a lot of them, which Brittany was kind of already like, they'd already been sailing, and it was really easy to get there. But they had made this cool culture, and of course, France in this time was doing its own thing, building its own culture, and so there's this really cool infusion of this like Celtic, British island people and France, and this is just like a cool culmination of that. That's how I'm really like interested in it. And that's the Breton is sort of where we get the peoples. It's the language. It's still spoken a little bit in Brittany today, but it comes mostly from Cornwall, and it's a language. It's more related to Cornish, but all these languages I think stem from the Celtic kind of thing. So like where we get Gaelic and all that. They're all kind of this. That's the head of the tree and has its roots go down. And Marie de France. So, like I said earlier, we don't really actually know too much about her. She was in some sort of popular court, and King Henry II of England was aware of her. His royal court was so like she was big in the aristocratic circles, I guess her works were. And this is Henry II of England was like I can't remember how many generations into the Norman part, but at this point, again, we have this really cool infusion of English, British, and French going on, and that's I think a lot of people are aware of that, and this is really like a big part of that. So she was born around 1160, died around 1215, and she wrote these stories, which are more commonly known as lay, and it's Lai, very French word, and this word we don't. It comes from a Breton word, Breton lay, same essential word, and we believe it comes from Old High German, the word leich, meaning play, melody, or song, or even an Irish word, which it's spelled like laid, Laid, but who knows? Who knows?
We should have asked Debbie.
Yes, yeah, we should have. Yeah, I don't know if D's are D's in Irish, but it would make sense. These, the Celtic peoples were like Northern European peoples before they ended up landing on the island, the British Islands. And so there's some old, language intermingling for thousands of years going on there that could come around, but it's just wild to see it happening here. But she was her stories were really great. And she took these old stories, much like how Arthur was an old story, and she kind of brought them to new life in the courts. Now, I definitely didn't go through all that was available, but this apparently is a much discussed English assignment in many classes across the world, because you can find tons and tons, like all the like Course Hero and gradesaver.com and all these like things have summaries with ads that are like blaring at you, and they're pretty fun. There's a ton of cool. I mean, there's tons to wrap away from this. Remember, like, so this was it. It kind of is like a lot of the other stories that we have from these areas where, because like the old Bretons weren't writing down their stories, these French courtiers, these people ended up kind of infusing like modern ideas into them. A lot of what we have with Arthur, like it's kind of asynchronous historically with what it would have been like when he was around, actually, if it was that way. So it's just kind of funny to see, but it's wild. I mean, she was extremely talented. The stories are like pretty, you like that YouTube video, I bet you is probably, it's not too hard to like follow and listen and enjoy a modern translation of it today. So yeah, Marie de France, though, it wasn't until 1581 that a French scholar, Claude Fauchet, actually even called her that. It kind of comes from certain things, like their ideas, but she never, it apparently looks like, specifically said that her name was that. There's a lot of guesses that historians have that she was, and there's a lot of abbesses that they pin it on, because she wrote these, was it the 12 lay? She wrote quite a few of these stories, and what English kids will be studying in college this semester, I'm sure, somewhere. So they're all part of her lays, and it's a very common like kind of style of story. And this one was just in particular was really popular. It was translated into Old Norse, and it circulated all the way to Iceland and was adapted into its own like saga, almost. So it became really popular and got some essentially spin-offs. I'm thinking like comic book, like, modern stuff today, and how like that disseminates and changes, and you've got all these things kind of going off of it. What's another big thing, though, and is that many scholars believe that she's the first woman known to write in what Wikipedia kind of notes francophone verse. So I guess like modern French, it probably is pretty easy to read her writings if you know French. It might sound a little awkward. I guess you could say it's like reading Shakespeare. It's a little awkward, but you can kind of make it out in a way. And again, the stories really hold well. Like what a lot of the analyses that I've seen and what Cammy's saying is the story is pretty straightforward. Bisclavret, it's an old Breton word for werewolf, but she specifically uses the Norman French word garwolf for like vicious werewolves. And Bisclavret, also in the story, the B is capitalized, so it's a proper noun. So we assume it's his name, it's who he is, but it's like saying like, oh, he's a specific and unique person. And I think there's some classic Disney like lessons you can kind of get from this, like, don't steal a werewolf's clothes. and but it's
Don't
fun.
accuse your husband of cheating if you're the one doing it.
Yes,
maybe.
that was from Snow White, right? Oh yeah, it's pretty fun. Yeah, the lay of Mary de France, 12 short narrative Breton lay, and so it's really cool. It's got, so it was written in Anglo-Norman. It was very 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 modern vernacular for like the time. Like she wasn't writing it in Latin and stuff like that. I think it was supposed to be very approachable, and that's why like King Henry II's court was like talking about it, because it was circulated pretty well, and it would have been easy for it to get down there. So yeah, like this, I think it kind of came. There's a scholar, Jack Zipes. He's written on this and Arthurian legends. They try and trace how they come from Wales, Cornwall, and Ireland to Brittany. That's kind of like where it filters. There's like a cone that it goes through, and Brittany's really where it comes. And I think like Mary de France was just someone who was able to really strike the iron while it was hot. These really good stories that she kind of modernized. It makes me think of Homer, like Homer stuff wasn't super original, but he just was like, oh yeah, I got all this great mythology.
He wrote it down, and that's what's important. That's
right.
how we
Yeah.
share things through. Yeah.
He spoke to the lawyer, got the trademark,
Right. Exactly.
nailed it. So yeah, I again, like I've been listening. I mentioned her before. I've been listening to Jennifer Pacton's. This is over the summer. I think it was like June, July. But she had these really awesome Celtic World lectures and things like that. And so I really learned a lot about the movement of that culture, and just kind of like how. So I think what I want to kind of point out is like this story, the Bisclavret story. It's a definitely got a lot of changes to it, but it's sort of like how Thor and Odin are super old and deep, and they're in the sagas of Snorri Snurlson, who was a 14th century dude, Christian, but he was writing these stories down. I think it's kind of that's the kind of the comparison I'd like to make. These super old stories that are timeless for these cultures. That in this case, a Gaelic Brittonic culture that was based around Cornwall. But then was sort of breathed new life just by being put into Anglo-Norman, and these courts, the Anglo-Norman courts, being interested in those stories and things like that. So yeah, really great story. I'm surprised it's not. I don't know. I'm surprised there's no movie with Johnny Depp. That's all. Like. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm surprised. Like I'm really kind of like Kenneth. Why isn't Kenneth Branagh like directing a movie starring him and Johnny Depp, where he's the Bisclavret and he has to kiss Johnny Depp? I don't know. Sounds like a great idea to me, Kenneth Branagh. When you're done with your Poirot,
We know he
movies,
listens, so
yeah, anything Poirot, he'll tap into it. He's doing the new movie for it, but yeah. So I thought this was a really fun section of the world to kind of look into, and all of her work is in the free domain, so you can take a look at it online. It's been a few hundred years, so she won't attack you for it. But I'm just surprised at the anonymity, but I'm also surprised at how well it holds up even today. So I think it's really great for those reasons. I'll try and link, if you can remind me or help me write down, I'll link that YouTube video for
okay.
that story. So yeah, I think that covers what I've discovered with it. Did you want to add anything else?
No, I think I'm good.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your story as always. Anyone, if you have any suggestions for the show, remember mythstorie@gmail.com. Mythstorie with an IE, not OIR. Mythstoire, not that. That's what Marie de France would write, but not that. Mythstorie. But our link tree in the comments or in the description below, excuse me, is where you can find all of our social media and stuff like that. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Oh,
De Bisclavret. Garwolf.